Howdy, boys and girls. Welcome back. It is the, it's not the official start of MACtion. The MACtion started last weekend, but this is the official start of MACtion when I'm distracted while we're doing the show because OU is on. They are tied with Buffalo at 3 apiece halfway through the third quarter. I did not look to see what the over-under with the fun index for this game was. If it was low, that would be the right move.
Appropriate. Yeah.
Carla, are you keeping track of MACtion as well?
I am. I'm actually, you can't, like I said, you can't tell. I'm actually wearing green in solidarity.
Nice.
So,
nice.
Yeah. So go Bobcats tonight. I am excited about MACtion.
We appreciate that. Buffalo's just taking over the ball, but they are stuck deep in their own end. So, and have a 2nd and 8. So we'll see what the Bobcats are able to do. Get a couple stops, which has not been the problem this year, and then muster some offense, which kind of has been the problem this year. But we'll see.
All right.
We'll see. There will probably be running commentary from me through the whole show, just because you guys know this. This has happened
it's
before.
MACtion.
It is. It's MACtion.
That's what we do.
And it's right there. It's right there on my phone, right there. Carla, we've got a massive game. I mean, massive game this weekend that we're going to get to. Before we do that, as we do, let's take a look back at last weekend. A whole bunch of fun stuff going on.
Yeah.
What did you what stood out to you as you watched games last Saturday?
It was just kind of a topsy-turvy kind of weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, as I was just kind of thinking through when I was putting my notes together for this, the first thing that stood out to me that like I remembered without going back and like trying to remember what I watched all weekend was, man, how much does LSU rely on Jayden Daniels? Like,
I did not realize that he was also LSU's leading rusher in that game.
Yeah. And man, did it show when he went out.
Yeah.
Because they were right in that game. They were right in that game. And then that hit and, knocked him out of the game as it rightfully should have. He should not have come back. But man, after he went out, that Tigers offense did absolutely nothing. And that game was over. Right.
Yeah,
like
it was.
That was frustrating. Because that could have been a really good game. On the opposite side of that, as you can tell, I'm fighting a cold. So thus the raspy voice this week. So sorry about that.
We're going to get Carla we're going to get Carla to sing some Barry White songs later. That'll be
right.
That'll be good.
If my voice makes it through the podcast, it'll be a miracle.
Baby.
Clemson did the unthinkable and beat Notre Dame.
And didn't just beat Notre Dame. I mean, I have a note about that too. I don't know if there's such a thing as reverse Clemsoning. And if we just discovered that last weekend. But I mean, Notre Dame sort of made that close at the end, but it really wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah. No, it definitely looked like Clemson was the ranked team in that game. And I'm actually I'm a tad surprised with the new playoff rankings that came out tonight. I'm kind of surprised that a 3-loss Notre Dame stayed ranked. They're still at number 20, but a 3-loss USC is out. Now, I know that USC, I mean, we've seen that they don't have defense, right? And maybe that's what the committee was taking into account there.
Yeah.
But you could almost argue that USC's losses are better.
You could make that. You could make that
argument. So that was just a little bit surprising. Staying out west, Arizona continues to be the team that nobody in the Pac-12 wants to play.
Right.
And now they're nationally ranked. Welcome to the college football playoff rankings, Arizona Wildcats. You are at number 21, behind Notre Dame.
Yep, it's true.
I don't know.
Don't know why. Did they play Colorado this weekend? Do I have that remembered?
I think so.
I think that's correct on the Pac-12 network. So I'm sorry you can't watch. Correct. But 2 p.m. at Colorado.
No.
Interesting matchup there for sure.
That game should be silly fun. Texas. We warned you. Texas needed overtime to beat Kansas State. after the Power Cats scored 20 straight points in like 5 minutes of game time. Thanks to 2 consecutive Texas fumbles to tie things up early in the fourth quarter. Had they not gone for 2 to take the lead, and I don't blame them for doing it because they had the momentum. Had they not done that, they would have won because they kicked the field goal to tie it at the end and then lost it in overtime. Had they just kicked the extra point, they would have won by 1. But I get it. When you're the underdog in that situation and you just have things rolling your way, you go for it, right? It's just like going for 2 in overtime. And so I don't blame them. But like the big thing that stood out to me overall on the weekend was that Bedlam was actually Bedlam.
That game was nuts.
What a game. And you were right about the Pokes playing with a whole bunch of emotion, with it being potentially the last game in that series for a while. So they went and upset the apple cart, and in the process may have knocked the Big 12 out of college football playoff contention.
Probably.
Because no, I mean, they had a road to hoe anyway, right? Like they were going to need some help with Texas sitting at number 7.
Yep.
But now with the best possible opponent in the conference title game having 2 losses, that might not be enough to get Texas in. If things get shaken up. So Big 12, I'm sorry. I think you are the first extinguish the flame. You are the first conference to leave the island of Survivor, if I might use that old analogy. I think the Big 12 is the first team out, or first conference out.
I think so.
And we'll see how everything else shakes out. But yeah, it was just kind of it was an all over the place kind of weekend. And I'm gonna let my voice rest and listen to you for a bit.
A couple of things. I had noted Bedlam. I had noted reverse Clemsoning in my notes. I do want to just briefly mention Ohio State and its sort of effort in New Jersey against Rutgers. Kyle McCord, not his best day, and a couple really poor passes, one of which was picked off. The Rutgers did a nice job defensively. It's weird to say that holding Marvin Harrison Jr. to 2 touchdown catches is keeping him in check, but it kind of was. He didn't feel like the same kind of impact player that he had. That award goes to Trey Henderson for the second week in a row. Henderson's efforts, and again, he was over 200 yards total offense, and the defense, play of the defense, left me feeling more annoyed than concerned. That was how I assessed that when our friend Kelly was poking at me at halftime and wondering what was going on. So not a great day, not a bad day. So I can't complain a whole lot. The single, the solo hero of the week is Iowa kicker Drew Stevens in that game in Wrigley Field that Iowa won 10-7 against Northwestern. I don't know if you saw highlights from that game or such as they are, but the turf at Wrigley was awful. The turf at Wrigley was coming up like in rolls of sod that you would buy from the grass store. And he managed the game-winning kick on that turf. No problems, sends Iowa home from Chicago with a shiny 10-7 win. Great way to begin the last few days of Brian Ferentz's tenure there. 10 points, 10 points. The last thing I would mention about last weekend is Go Army beat Navy with the upset of Air Force next weekend. Army is in the driver's seat for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. It will come down to, I don't think Navy can win the trophy. Although maybe we'll have to look at what the tiebreakers would be, because they would all have one loss if Navy were to win Army Navy. So that's something for maybe for the next show or the next couple of weeks. We can look that up. One thing I want to do, my father emailed me today and said you should take a look at the tiebreakers for Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State if all are 11-1. And I'm like, oh, this is making my brain hurt already, and I haven't even looked yet. So, that's something else to consider, and something else, depending on what happens this weekend, that might be a consideration.
Right.
The last thing I would mention for last weekend out in Philadelphia, it was a rough day for our Cornell Big Red Bears and their very slender Ivy League title hopes as they lost to Penn 23-8. Penn's defense largely kept Cornell's offense in check, although you can't contain, not entirely anyway, Drew Powell, my nephew and Cornell starting running back. Drew had 5 carries for 14 yards and a catch for another 11. The Big Red have just 2 games left on their season, and apparently Drew's college football career. That 2-game run starts at 1:30 on ESPN Plus on Saturday at Dartmouth, which is in a big glob of a 3-2 second place tie in the conference. So we will see how that goes. The Bobcats have the ball 4th and goal at the 2. Rourke hands off, and there's a touchdown. So,
Yay!
Much like in not dissimilar fashion to Iowa and Northwestern, this is a barn burner. And there's still 2 minutes left in the third quarter, so we could get into double-digit scoring by both teams here. So just hold on, everybody. It may happen. That, of course, is the fun of the Group of 5 football, and AJ is here, as he always is, to talk about the things that are coming up this weekend that we should watch for, both in the Group of 5. He might have a thing or two to say about James Madison. My understanding is that the Sun Belt just sent a petition to the NCAA to allow James Madison to be bowl eligible because they're one of the best damn teams in the country, and they should be.
Yep.
AJ may talk about that a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. AJ, what do you have coming?
Hello, everyone. It is time for your Group of 5 After Dark report. And I want you to all know that we're getting later in the season. We got to be pickier and choosier. I realize I've been going really long over the past few weeks. We're not going to do that this week. We're going to try and be fast. On Friday, 9 p.m. on ESPN2, we have North Texas at SMU. The fun index is 67.5. And North Texas can't stop a light breeze, so you know who's putting up all those points. It's SMU. This should be fun. Just put it on. It'll be great. At 10:45 on Friday on FS1, we have Wyoming at UNLV. Fun index is only 50. And if you had told me at the beginning of the season that Wyoming at UNLV was a game you should circle on your calendar, I would have told you you're crazy. But UNLV is good, and Wyoming is kind of hurt. So we might have a game where UNLV jumps up and surprises everybody because Wyoming has looked incredibly mortal and has been very mortal over the past few weeks. So, hey, watch this game, 10:45 on Friday. At noon on Saturday, because there's no other games happening at noon on Saturday, we have Georgia Tech at Clemson. This is even week Georgia Tech, which means they should win. And winning at Clemson would be hilarious because it would make them bowl eligible. And Clemson needs this win to get bowl eligible. At the end of the game, after beating Notre Dame last week, Dabo said, buy in on Clemson because this is a stock you want to invest in. No, it's not. I'm selling. Go Bees. Also at noon, we have Tulsa at Tulane. I'm only saying this because Tulane has been on a very mess around and find out sort of game plan over the last 4 weeks. They're not beating teams they should beat by a lot. They're holding on to win. They're 8-1, but it is by the skin of their teeth. They're probably going to beat Tulsa, but this is, again, going to be closer than most people would think. So when you see that on the scoreboard, just know I told you so. At 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus, actually great game. We have App State at Georgia State. App State needs this win to get bowl eligible. Georgia State already bowl eligible. It's a thing. We can say that in 2023. That's weird. So is App. App State is incredibly weird right now. They just cannot seem to get over the hump. They should have lost to Southern Miss, and they didn't. But they're 5-4, and they're just kind of out there. They don't seem to have a real identity, and they're just losing games they should not lose. I expect them to lose to Georgia State, who's actually good, and I think there's a lot of people in Boone who are going to be asking questions about the coaching staff. At 3:30 on the Big Ten Network, we have Rutgers at Iowa. and I'm only saying this because the over-under, the fun index, is the record low 28.5. Hammer the under. Brian Ferentz can't save you now. Iowa still wins because everything at the end, Iowa wins. In sensational counter-programming, though, on Fox at 3:30, we have Utah at Washington. You should actually watch that game. It is going to be much better. Washington played a game with absolutely no defense against USC, and that game was as great a fireworks show as you will ever see, and it was great, and I watched every single snap, and it was fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. This will not be that game. Utah has an actual semblance of a defense. They got torn asunder by Oregon last week, and I expect Washington to do the same thing, but I expect this to be a lot closer than the USC game. LOL. On ESPN2 at 3:30, we have Washington State at Cal. You should watch this game because both of these teams have been on the Pac-12 network for the better part of half the season. So this is a chance for you to watch Jayden Ott at Cal do Jayden Ott things, and he's very, very good. And see a Washington State team that everybody thought was going to be very good. They are the one in the 8-1 of Oregon State's record, and yet they are fully they're unreparably broken at this point. It's going to be weird and fun, and just keep, an eye on it. That's all I'm saying. At 5 p.m., which is a weird time, to be fair, on the Pac-12 network, which is a weird network, to be fair, we have Stanford at Oregon State. And Oregon State got real cute against Colorado. If you stayed up to watch that game, you got to see the fun score at one point of 20-5 because of a penalty on an extra point after an Oregon State touchdown, which moved them like a yard closer to the end zone. So Oregon State decided to go for two. They snapped the ball over DJ's head, and Colorado picked it up and ran it back for a 2-point conversion. So instead of an extra point for Oregon State, it was a 2-pointer for Colorado football, amazingly. But I expect Oregon State to win here. The problem is Stanford is not playing the game you expect them to play. They're playing the intellectual brutality, which is what most people think Stanford is. Their coach is not that. He is actually I want to throw the hell out of the football type of coach. So they're playing it because it's working. And I think Stanford might keep this one closer than you'd expect, but I expect Oregon State to win. At 8 p.m. on the ACC network, we have Duke at UNC. And I know that this is ACC football. Why are you talking about ACC football? That's weird. It's because I had this game scheduled or circled on my schedule earlier in the season because Duke was running off a ton of wins and UNC was running off a bunch of wins. And this looked like it was going to be like a big, honest-to-goodness game. Duke has gotten hurt a lot. Their starting quarterback is done for the year, and so they have a guy like Gunnar Mantis or something like that, which is a really cool name. It's not his actual name. It's a way not as cool name. Playing the quarterback at Duke. I see UNC winning, and Mac Brown getting a lovely handshake out of Mike Elko where maybe he can sap some of the defensive energy that Duke has. I see UNC winning here, but Mike Elko is going to make that offense look real, real bad. At 9 p.m. on the Pac-12 network, we have Arizona State at UCLA. This feels like a UCLA stubs their toe game. You know the game I'm talking about where everybody's like, oh, it's UCLA, they're so good. And then they stub their toe for no reason. I see this as that type of game. Arizona State probably doesn't win, but UCLA looks real bad in the process. Just, keep an eye on that one. But we're finally at the game I really wanted to talk about, and that's at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. It's USC at Oregon. Now, Fox, I love you for this because you could have put this game on at 8. You didn't. You could have made this like a weird 3:30 game. You didn't. You put this on at its intended time, which is 10:30 p.m. And so I need you, Carla and Crappy, and anybody else listening to this, I need you to get your caffeinated beverages and start consuming them at 8 p.m. because you're going to need it to get through the fireworks show that starts at 10:30. The fireworks are going to come from the Ducks, though. USC has not played a defense like Oregon's yet this year. Oregon has a very, very good defense, and Washington was the only team that even made it look halfway bad. Oregon has a mean, mean defensive line. And USC doesn't really have an offensive line. Caleb is going to be running for his life. Bo Nix is going to look great. And that Oregon line is going to absolutely mash USC. I expect this to be an Oregon absolute massacre. But USC might pull some tricks, and we might see some fun here. The fun index is 78 right now. Hit the over. Let's have a party at 10:30 p.m. And finally, we have a Hawaii test at midnight on the Team One Sports app. Right now, what I want you to do is I want you to pause this podcast, and I want you to go to the App Store, and I want you to download that Team One Sports app. And I want you at midnight to open it up and tap on Air Force at Hawaii. Men's football, it'll say that like right below it, because there's other sports that's on there, like volleyball and stuff. But men's football, Air Force at Hawaii. Air Force is going to tuck you into bed. You should watch this on your phone in bed. I promise it's worth it. And it is something that Hawaii is just not built to do. Air Force is going to absolutely run them over. And this game should be over quick. I love you both, but you're not built like that. Air Force wins, and that should tuck you in for this week 10. Quick preview for next week. We have a full schedule on Saturday. And you're going to need to stay up next week too. I promise it's going to be worth it. Back to you, Carla and Krabby.
Thank you, AJ. We appreciate it as always. And you've given us lots of stuff to check out when we're not checking out a few other games that are sort of important. One of which we're going to save it to last, because as we do occasionally, this one is big enough for both Carla and for me that we want to give it the build up, the tension, the suspense that it deserves. So we're going to start at 3:30 on Fox. Number 18 Utah at number 5 Washington. The Huskies are favored by 9.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is a low, and this is definitely a nod to Utah's defense. A low for this game, 53.5 points. Carla, what do you think?
Yeah. So, like, here's the thing with this game, right? Again, I agree with your assessment there that Utah's defense is probably the reason for that low fun index. Utah's spectacular at stopping the run. They've got one of the top 10 rush defenses in the country.
Yes.
That ain't going to matter one iota against Washington. Now,
no.
Yes, the Huskies actually did find a ground game last weekend. After I called them out and said that your lack of a ground game is going to get you in trouble, they went out and rushed for like 300 yards last weekend.
Right.
So, okay, great. We found a ground game. That's not their bread and butter, right? Washington's offense is Michael Penix or bust. And the Utah secondary might not be able to keep up with that offense that leads the nation in passing yards. The Utah defense is not built for that. Are they going to be able to throw up one heck of a speed bump? I think so.
Yeah.
But they're primarily a line team, right? They win games at the line. And if they can't put enough pressure on Penix, he's going to be able to throw that deep ball. We saw this same script against Oregon for Utah, right? Where the Ducks were able to put up 248 yards in the air, which is not an exorbitant amount, but that was still more yards than Utah managed from its entire offense altogether. Right. That's just the difference here. Utah is set up to stop the ground game, not the secondary. And with this game being in Seattle, add all that up, that adds up to a Washington win for me, but a lower scoring game, I think. Okay.
My notes: defense wins championships unless you're playing Washington in Husky Stadium. UW is clearly embracing, is comfortable the mantle as the class of the Pac-12 at this point. And while that has been Utah in the past couple of seasons, this year the Utes just don't have enough to keep up with the Huskies offense. They don't have to run the football like they did last weekend. Although if they do, that's all the better. Michael Penix and his receivers will get the job done. And the Huskies win this one at home. Also at 3:30 on CBS, number 13 Tennessee at number 14 Missouri. Tennessee is favored by 1. The AJ Fun Index is a 58.5 points. Carla, what do you think?
Gosh, this one's a really tough call.
The comparisons are they are so even all over the place.
They are. Yeah, they're really even. And Mizzou has been so close to those big wins this season, right? Especially that game at home against LSU. I called that out last week. And this Tennessee team's just been all over the place, right? They got crushed by Florida and Alabama, and then they beat South Carolina by 3 touchdowns. Right. So the Vols are coming off of a big win, right? They beat the heck out of UConn at home last weekend for homecoming. And while we tend to talk about Joe Milton when it comes to that Tennessee offense, the Vols also have a legit ground game.
Mm-hmm.
They're averaging nearly 230 yards per game rushing, which is third in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And Mizzou is good against the run, but not great.
Right.
Offensively for Mizzou, Brady Cook is having himself a really nice season, averaging nearly 300 yards per game in the air, and he's a legit dual threat on the ground. Neither of these teams defends the pass very well.
Right.
And so, yes, if it feels like I'm talking around like an answers to like who I'm going to pick in this game, like, yeah, it's because I am. So, okay, here's where I'm going to land.
Mm-hmm.
The Vols defensively have to pressure Cook because he's a dual threat, right? If you can't pressure him, and the Vols don't have a great secondary to stop the passing game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cook's going to be able to find receivers like Luther Burden,
right,
if he's not getting pressured. I'm going to go with my gut.
Okay.
And say Tigers at home in a really, really, really close game. Really, really close game. These teams are just so evenly matched. I can't make heads or tails of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mizzou is on the brink. And playing in Columbia in the prime slot for SEC. Sure. Let's say Mizzou, go get yourself a signature win.
I mean, the rankings, both teams are 3-2 in the conference, 7-2 overall. Granted, one team does have a leading receiver named Squirrel. That's something to take into account. The thing that you said about Missouri being so close in really big games, and that's something that they haven't really done since they've been in the SEC. And I feel like this is a team that is due for one of those. And the LSU game was close. They were respectable playing against Georgia. At home, even if Squirrel Wright gets his catches, I think at home Missouri is going to take that step. Fend off the Vols and take control of second place in the SEC East and probably New Year's Six bowl and that'll be a good way for Mizzou to kind of get head towards wrapping up what has been a remarkable season for them. At 7 p.m. Number 9, Ole Miss at number 2, Georgia. Georgia is favored by 10.5 points. The AJ Fund Index is a repeat, 58.5 points. Carla, what do you think?
No offense, Tennessee. This might be Georgia's only real test before facing Bama in the title game.
Yeah.
Right? That's because this Ole Miss offense can be an absolute beast to defend. And so I think this game is going to come down to whether the Georgia defense can throw some speed bumps for Jackson Dart and Trey Harris. Trey Harris, the guy who had 213 yards receiving last week against Texas A&M. Just a little game, right? Yeah. The other challenge here is that Carson Beck and the Georgia offense still hasn't truly found an answer for replacing Brock Bowers. They haven't needed it in the 2 games that they haven't had him. A couple of timely interceptions helped Georgia finish off Mizzou last week. But against a prolific offense like Ole Miss, the Dogs can't afford to fall too far behind and expect to catch up, which is what they had to do last week, right? Mizzou had the lead at the half, and Georgia had to come back. And that's been a pattern for Georgia this year. They've started slow and then had to figure out a way to win in the second half. That's not going to work against an offense like Ole Miss.
Don't want to do that.
Right. So if Georgia comes out ready to play, they're going to win this game at home. But if Ole Miss can get out quickly to an early lead, this is one they can very easily lose at home. I'm going to take Georgia here, but man, pay attention to the first quarter of this game. If Ole Miss is up early, this immediately goes on upset alert. But I'm going to say that Georgia's playing confidently right now. They're playing better than what we've seen, even without Brock Bowers. I think the Dogs figure out a way to get this done, but pay attention early in this game to see whether or not Ole Miss is going to be able to put the scare in early.
Okay. I think Georgia's a little bit like Michigan, outside of the cheating, in that They haven't really been tested, not to the same degree that Michigan has had a cupcake schedule. I would not say that as Georgia's going through the SEC. And I will give them credit as the schedule has gotten tougher as they get deeper into the season. The Bulldogs have improved, and this is, if anything, we've seen since Brock Bowers left the lineup with his injury. We've seen a more complete team. We've seen one with more guys involved in the offense. And it's not, it's not the whole offense kind of going through one person. And I agree with you. This is their toughest game left on the schedule till they get to what would likely be the SEC championship game against Alabama. Ole Miss is dangerous, and folks, listen to what Carla said about what happens if the Rebels get an early lead, because that's. We might have to find out if Georgia's has it in them to kind of play with their hair on fire for the first time, if out of necessity. So I think Ole Miss is dangerous. Overall, though, I don't think they're going to beat Georgia at home on a Saturday night as we get into November and get into games that really matter. While we back up for our final game of the week.
I say, speaking of games that really matter.
Speaking of games that really matter, the game that really matters to me, Buffalo has just tied the game at 10 after scoring at the outset of the fourth quarter. Although there's a flag on the play, so that maybe that comes off the board. Nope, it's offside against OU. So that's 10 points. Huge nude, not big nude, huge nude. On Fox. Number 3, that team up north at number 10 Penn State. The Cheaters are favored by 4.5 points. The AJ Fun Index is 45.5. Interesting. The ESPN matchup predictor, however, is 50.7% in favor of Penn State.
Yeah.
Carla, do you have any thoughts about this game? Any feelings bubbling up from it?
Just a few here.
Okay.
First of all, thank you to the new media rights deal that the biggest game of the week in the Big Ten is now at noon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love that.
Dumb.
But here we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is the stripe out game in Beaver Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So the stadium is not the white out because we only do that at night. So this will be the stripe out game. Penn State holds an overall record in the stripe out game at 8-2.
Okay.
Worth noting here.
Mm-hmm.
However, here's the real key to this game. The Penn State secondary has to prevent J.J. McCarthy from beating them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
the entire game. Because these teams offensively are statistically even.
Mm-hmm.
They're each putting up about 40 points per game. Their rush and pass numbers are within 20 yards of each other or so. The big difference statistically is that the Penn State defense allows 200 yards per game in the air.
Right.
And that's more than just numbers here. We saw that against Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary against Ohio State didn't have an answer for Marvin McCord. They just flat out didn't.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot let the same thing beat them again this week. Now, the good news here, offensively, Drew Aller has aired the ball out a little bit more over the past couple of weeks.
Noticeably better.
Happens,
yeah.
Yes. And so if that happens and the Penn State offense can spread out that Michigan defense a little bit, then the ground game can really get going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Aller being able to hit a couple of deep balls and the secondary figuring something out and making some sort of substantial improvement from what we saw a couple weeks ago in Columbus. Of course, I'm going to say Penn State wins, right? That's my job. Penn State wins. But man alive, this team needs to cover Roman Wilson better than they covered Marvin Harrison Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of that receiving core, like the game depends upon it because it does.
Okay.
Because it does. Secondary, this is on you. Figure this out, win this game at home, and make Crappy figure out what the three-way tie is if everybody ends up with one loss.
That is, I promise you, we will lead the show with that. if that were to be the situation next week. I think your assessment is correct. I don't know that but Marvin Harrison Jr. Clearly gave Penn State problems as he does with virtually everyone. 162 yards and 11 catches against Penn State a couple weeks back. It's some of it is having a better day. Certainly pressuring McCarthy will be a big deal. But being able to handle that Michigan's passing game is going to be a huge part of this. And I think Penn State has the talent to do that. I also, as you mentioned, Drew Allers in the last couple of weeks has played a lot better. And to the degree that I don't know if it's coaches are calling plays that ask him to throw deep, or if he's just taking that option more often. But that the Ohio State game seems to have been a dividing line, and he has been it seems to be more comfortable doing that now. You don't know.
Yeah.
We know Michigan cheats, number one. We know Michigan is good at beating bad teams, as they should be. We don't know what happens to Michigan when they play a good offense. We don't know what happens with Michigan plays a team that has two running backs who could start pretty much anywhere. We don't know what Michigan's going to do with a young quarterback and a big arm, and who is suddenly comfortable throwing the deep ball. We don't know what Michigan's going to do when they get smacked in the mouth, and they're going to get smacked in the mouth on Saturday. I think Penn State's been through it, and Penn State knows what it takes. I'm not sure that Michigan does, so I'm going to pick Penn State. And the fact that this game is in Happy Valley is a big part of that. But I think Penn State will have enough to beat Michigan in a close, low-scoring kind of football game. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on YouTube or on the show's Facebook page. And for the first time this season, as you are aware, you can read us on our Substack. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Either way, be sure to come back next week to see exactly how wrong we were. Carla, you have made it through the show with your voice relatively intact.
We're hanging on by a thread. We're here.
Hanging on by a thread. Okay, that still counts. You're still talking. Do you have any final thoughts?
Just some quick things. Two other games that I saw on the schedule worth paying attention to. This one made me go when I saw it on the schedule, and I mentioned this to you in the thread. Mm-hmm. West Virginia at number 17, Oklahoma. Yeah. That game's at 7 on Fox. The Sooners are reeling right now.
Yeah.
And West Virginia just absolutely demolished BYU last weekend. Mm-hmm. Could the Eagles steal this one on the road? I think it's possible.
Boy, that would be fun.
I think it's possible. Pay attention to that game. Because the big game for the weekend is at noon. So in the primetime window, like, have at it. Keep your eye on that one. That one could be fun. If you feel like staying up late, USC at number 6, Oregon at 10:30, also on Fox. USC is done. But this game should be full of points.
Yes.
That game should be a lot of fun. So if you feel like staying up late, go with that. And then finally, I have to mention it. Yes. FIU at Middle. That game's at 3:30 Eastern on ESPN Plus. Mm-hmm. FIU is 4-5. Middle is 2-7. Gonna miss a bowl game this year. Yet Middle is favored at home by 11.5.
Okay.
So this game's just for pride at this point, but I'm hoping to see a Blue Raider win on Saturday at Floyd. It should be a really fun day. I'll be watching Penn State, Michigan at the tailgate, and then walking over to Floyd
Nice.
to at least catch part of the middle game. And the weather's going to be beautiful here, sunny and in the 60s. So it's going to be a great day for football all the way around. And I hope I have my voice back so I can yell from the beer garden so everybody can hear me.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Go blue all the way around this weekend.
Okay, careful with what you, especially saying that this weekend. First, I would point out OU is driving. They just got a first down inside the 10-yard line with 11 minutes left of the game. So perhaps points are coming up here shortly. Next thing, Ohio State plays Michigan State at home. That is the NBC primetime game. Check out Ohio State's all gray uniforms. They are sweet. They are fantastic, and I love them. The third thing, it has been brought to my attention by a friend of the show and one of our original editors, Kim DeBoo. This weekend is the biggest little game in college football. Williams, I'm going to say this incorrectly again, and Kim's going to laugh at me. Amherst. At noon on Saturday, not televised. You can do some internet sleuthing and find it if you want to watch it. I know there's Kim goes to a watch party every year, usually someplace in Pittsburgh East's End, where they get together with Williams folks and Amherst folks and do it up. Kim linked me to a story by a former colleague at the Beaver County Times. So I would have to have been a colleague of yours too, Chuck Kurtai.
Yes.
Now works for the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He wrote about two brothers from Greensburg Central Catholic High School. That's a town just a little bit east of Pittsburgh if you're not local. The brothers played football at Greensburg Central Catholic. One went to Williams, one went to Amherst. They're playing each other this weekend. Kind of a fun thing, but very cool. But this story, relayed to Chuck by Dick Quinn, who I guess is the SID at Williams, has been involved with that for a very, very long time. And I'm just going to read to you from Chuck's story. We'll post a link to this in the Substack when the show is posted, so you can take a look for yourself. In the days when Williams still had a grass football field, some students from Amherst hopped the fence and emblazoned a large A on the turf. Quinn suspects bleach might have been the substance used to create the A. Later that winter, in retaliation, some Williams students invaded the Amherst football field after a snowfall and did some lettering of their own. They made a giant B+ in the snow. Big Ten folks are not smart enough to make jokes like that, but that is a very, very cool illustration of the rivalry. And why it is the biggest little game in college football, and one that we will definitely touch on when we join you back here next week. We are Williams supporters here on the Carla Crappy Show, and we will be cheering at noon on Saturday. And as I said, be sure to check the Substack so you can take a look at Chuck's story about the brothers playing in the big little game as well. Carla, you made it.
Was one of my first editors.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah, he was. Okay. He was assistant editor when I got brought on board as a young Cubs sports reporter over in that sports department. So
okay.
So yeah, it's good to hear from him again. That's awesome.
Okay. The Bobcats are about to kick field goal and go up 13-10 with 8:56 left. Did that make it? That was good. Okay, that was that was close.
Hashtag college kickers.
Hashtag college kicker situation. Guys, Carla, I appreciate your effort. You have trooped through this after lectures. I hope you don't have to say anything to anybody for the rest of the week.
I got another class tomorrow. But it's mostly discussion, so I'm okay. I just have to
just point
at
a couple
people. Slides up, and they're going to discuss.
You go talk.
We'll get through tomorrow. Tomorrow's not going to be too bad, and then Thursday's lab day. So yep, I'm good.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sticking it out and doing the show. The show must go on, etc., etc., etc. Thanks
I couldn't miss this week. Come on.
I know. Sometimes in November you're playing hurt. That's just how it goes sometimes. Thanks also to AJ for once again for his contributions. We will be hearing from him soon. as we get into championship stuff and rivalry stuff and postseason stuff. AJ will be joining us as he always does. And of course, thank you to you guys for watching, for listening, for reading, for all the things that you do, for putting up with me as I try to watch a football game, as I'm recording a podcast. I didn't think I was too obnoxious this time, but Bobcats have a lead with about 8 minutes left, so we'll hope that keeps going. Guys, enjoy your weekend. Go Nits, go Eefs,
go middle,
go Bucks, go middle, go Bobcats right now, and go for your team as well. Unless it's Michigan, then sorry. Cheers, everyone. Enjoy the weekend, enjoy the games, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yeah, people, yeah, people.